Hi, everyone. Welcome to We Belong Education podcast. My name is Saurubh, the host of this podcast. And this is our first episode. I'm joined with my co-host, Helen. How are you doing, Helen?
Hello, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, good. Helen, this is your first rodeo with the podcast. I've had podcasts in the past before, but thank you very much for motivating me to do another one because we've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about wanting to have a podcast for a while.
We have,
Uh,
we have.
we have. We've actually had podcast similar conversations on the phone a lot. So this is a
Yes,
new
we
way
do
to,
spend a lot of time on the phone discussing all things sector
yeah.
related.
And we thought, why don't we just record a few and call it a podcast? Hey. So,
Hey,
um,
if we're asking these questions, surely somebody else is.
somebody else is. Yes, why not? Yes, that's a good way to put it. Well, we are glad to bring podcasts to the community. Although I have done this in the past, there are few conversations which I really wanted to have, and then we finally are here. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, because this is the first time, those who are listening to this, they might have heard from me and they want to hear less of me, I guess. Okay, as comparatively. And I think that's why I should start by asking you some questions so people would know who Helen is, right?
Okay,
Uh,
let's go.
who Helen is for them. Helen, tell me about you. Who are you, Helen?
Who am I? Um, I really hate this question
Okay.
because my first answer always goes to I'm a mum of four, and people are like, no, your identity is more than a mum. But for me,
Mhm.
I always go to I'm a mum of four. I've been working in this sector for quite a while. I say 20 years in the education and care sector, and previous to that, I used to work in playgroups. Um, I've been approved provider. I've been an area manager, operations manager. I'm currently a sector development manager,
Man.
which please don't ask me what that is. No, it's a, um, but yes, uh,
You
four
also
kids.
you also
I
have
also
a
have two dogs, which is very important as well because if you ask my children, they're my favorite children, my furry ones.
yeah. You also have a husband.
Yeah, whoops. Yes, he's right down the list. Sorry,
Like,
Brent. Yes,
I
I do
know him,
have.
so I just wanted, if he ever listens to that, I don't want him to be feel left out. So, and
Oh, I
it's
think he's
interesting
used
that
to
you
it.
kind of interrupted me by saying, "Oh, hang on, I also have two dogs," and I thought you were going to interrupt me by saying, "Oh, hang on, I also have a husband." I forgot to tell you that.
Sorry,
So-
Brent. Yes, I do have a husband. I
Mhm.
think he's used to being down the list, obviously, being parents of four kids.
Yeah, four kids. Well, see,
Mm.
it's interesting, you know how you said in the beginning, I hate this question because you introduce yourself as a mom, and then people kind of tell you that that's not enough.
Yes.
And it's
Mm,
see, I didn't want to go. Although before this podcast, we've been talking about what topics to talk,
mm,
and identity was one of them, and
yes.
that's
Mm,
and then you kind of brought it up where
mm,
you kind of laid down identities and like I'm
mm,
a mom,
mm.
I'm a this, I'm a that, but mostly when people ask me this question or someone else's question, we often usually just give the professional identity, isn't it? Like,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
maybe I give professional identity because I don't have kids. Depends upon the context. I guess if I'm at a dog, no, yeah. Even if I'm at a dog park and people say, people usually don't say who are you? People actually don't say that.
Although,
Hey,
well, for anyone that's actually gone to any of your PD sessions, they will know that very early on in your intros, you do introduce yourself as a doggo dad. So
yes, I do.
maybe your identity is a dad.
Uh, I if I get an opportunity, a stage to present, dogs are gonna come up. That's for
Yep.
sure. But if
Hmm.
I'm going on a walk or I meet a random person, they don't even ask the question, "Who are you?" I think they ask, "Actually, what do you do for a living?"
Mm,
And it's I think that's maybe because predominantly we've been answering so many questions in relation to, let's say, professional identity, that
mm,
even the questioning has become professional. Hey, my name is What do you do for a living? Like,
mm.
if anybody invites me to a barbecue, please invite me. Even though I'm vegetarian, I would still come. Um, I'll bring my own rice to kind of anyways. And people often say, "What do you do for a living?" rather than
Mm,
tell us about you or something. And even if they were to say, "Tell us about you," I would still be answering um, professional questions.
mm.
Another.
I think the mum thing is interesting though, and we've actually discussed this before. I think as a society we often discount the
Mhm.
importance of being
Yeah,
a mum. You know, let's we all know anyone, a lot of people in this sector, you know, Montessori tells us that parents are the first teacher. So why
mm,
is it that we feel like, oh, I'm a
yeah,
mum, but I shouldn't say that because it's not enough? Because you
yeah.
know what? I think it really is.
Two things came to my mind when you said
Mm,
that. When somebody applies for an interview and they have never worked in professionally, and let's say
mm.
they applied for the interview for in a see, guys, I don't like to say long day care because it's like it already has a name long day in
It's
it.
early years
Early,
learning.
like imagine this. What sort of day you had? A long day caring for others. So it's like you see my Australian accent came out. But anyways, I don't have an Australian accent. I tried every now and then, mate. Okay, anyways, so I don't like to say long day care because even in the name
Mm,
itself, there is a narrative of being lost. So I just say in early years learning or in outside school I care. If
mm.
somebody wants to apply for a job and they don't have a professional experience, but if they're a mother of three kids, four kids, is that a good qualifier? Should be. But I'm asking a
100%.
critical question. I'm asking a critical question. I'm just putting it out there. This it could be a provocative question. Is that a qualifier? Or people would say, no, you don't have experience working with children.
Yes, because it's hard and first on that's being a parent is hard and fast learning on the job. Everything else can be taught, but
Yeah.
you know, I
Parenting can't be
think
taught.
I mean, your mum had twins, so she's got to have great time management.
Yeah. She can be an approved provider tomorrow.
She-
No, no, like, I'm asked like this is like a question which came to my mind. Would I or would anyone sitting there interviewing people, one person walks in, says, I'm a mother of three. Are we just going to brush that answer or are we going to say, oh, hang on, let's talk more about that because this is a really good qualifier? Like, do
Well,
they expand more on that question? Or do they say, all right, good that you're a mother of three, mother of four. Okay, can you tell us your recent experience in childcare? And you say, no, I don't have it. I'm like, okay, all right. And
their
I
recent experience
wonder,
was all I got breakfast this morning for my children, and I got them off to
yeah.
school.
Yeah, I
I
wonder.
actually I love a mum. When I was an approved
Mhm.
provider, I used to love, you know, hiring mums because also it's a you got to put food on that table, man. That's a great motivator to be great at your job.
Yes. No, to all the mums out there, man, that if that is not a good qualifier, then our sector needs to look at something. Because
Mm-mm,
let's face it, right now, in early years learning, at least we have some sort of qualification. Now, you know the word qualification, if you kind of break it down, it's like what qualifies you to do something. That
mm,
is your qualification. So at the
mm,
moment, what qualifies people to do work in early years learning is different than outside school care is different than teaching. But like if you were to just look at after school care, you actually do not need anything other than working with children card, which qualifies you. So you're to work with children, which means your qualification is a card. Yes.
mm,
Now to get that card, you just have to make sure that don't have a you haven't hurt a child yet. You don't have a criminal record yet. I mean, it doesn't guarantee anything in the future.
mm.
So if you were to just if that can qualify you to work with children, being a mother and having nothing on the resume could also be a starting point. And that's how I said two things can come into my mind. That was one of
Mm,
them. The
mm,
second one was when you say a lot of people in our sector or a lot of people in our society may not see that as a big identity. I
mm,
was one of them because I grew up. My mom was you say housewife or homemaker or stay home mom, whatever,
mm,
however you want to put it, right?
mm,
So as a child, everyone. So I was born in India, and my sister and I are twins. So everyone in that uh, colony, you may call it,
mm,
most of the mothers were stay-home moms.
mm,
So it wasn't good or bad, great or worse. It was just what is.
Mm,
Every mom, all the aunties were at home, all the moms were home, right? This
mm,
is now in the initial years of my life, I wouldn't make much of it. As I said, it was what is, yeah.
mm.
But as I kept getting older, I would look at my mom who is having a nap in the afternoon and my dad who's working in the afternoon, thinking, why is my mom having naps in the afternoon? Meanwhile, my dad is burning in heat. Later, I came to know in my life that she was iron deficient. Okay. She's always been iron deficient in her life. So, and now I love my naps every now and then if I'm not consulting. I'm like, okay, dogs, me, aircon on, put the window blinds down and have a nap. Maybe my mom's genes are too strong in me sometimes. But as I first initial years, mom was everything. And dad, I was more like scared of my dad rather than love my dad. And I think my dad preferred that narrative too. That as long as my kids are scared of me, I'm happy. Um, but my mom, so when I grew up, I was like, do something with your life, man. But now I realize that that is such an important to all the moms who are listening. We are very thankful that you do what you do. So yeah,
Yes, because your
okay.
mother wasn't just iron deficient. She was a tired mum of twins, and one of those twins was you. So that was
Yes.
really hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel wonder why she gets so many gifts and she gets to travel the world with me because I don't think one lifetime is enough for me to pay back my mom, pay back
Yes.
what she has done. Meanwhile, my dad doesn't even know. I, I'm checking my phone. I had to like send a voice message to my parents on a group chat. Like, does my dad even have my phone number or what? What's going on? Like my mom so since that day, because I've been recovering from my shoulder surgery, since that day, my mom is like calling me every day on
Mm,
WhatsApp just to make sure that someone from the family has called me from India. But my dad still, oh damn. Okay, so someone who I thought was everything for me, mom, then became do something ends
hmm
up being still everything for me. Yeah. So it's kind of,
hmm
it's still like a cycle. And I would like to stop the cycle right there. You have also worked a lot with the children, huh?
I
Yeah.
have.
And
Many
your
years
own
on the
children.
floor.
Say
Many
again?
years on the floor with children
Many.
that are not my own, but
Yeah.
then eventually feel like they are very much my own.
hmm
Um,
Talking about your own, sorry, I
mm,
interrupted you, which I would do quite often. Um, your own kids have worked with you in a childcare sector. Yeah. Please.
yes, they have. My eldest, who is now a primary school teacher, has been an USH educator, and two of my other kids are also USH educators, currently USH educators.
So you just finished your degree in
I
teaching.
did.
And you just said to me that you are enrolling, or have you already enrolled
I
in the
have enrolled.
damn? Tell us about that. What is that?
I'm doing a graduate certificate in autism. While I do
Mhm.
often joke that I have a PhD in autism because one of my children is on the spectrum,
Okay.
yes, I thought I should make it official and get a piece of paper that says I know things about autism as well.
That piece of paper, like this, when people say, "Oh, it's just a piece of paper,"
Mm.
when you do a degree and people say piece of like because I get that sometimes. Like, oh, it's a piece of paper. I'm like, yeah, what? Go get it. If that's just a piece of paper, it is a piece of paper. But isn't everything a piece of paper? Marriage certificate is a piece of paper, isn't it? Affidavit is a piece of paper. In court, it's admissible or inadmissible. I've been watching a lot of Suits, so I think I'm a lawyer because I just watch it.
No,
Um,
I think, look, yes, let's not minimize the hard work it takes somebody to get a
mhm.
qualification. And I do think that what you're saying right now is being driven by the fact that you've just completing your PhD, and that's a lot of work. But like, I think sometimes, especially people that have been in this industry a long time, like let's look at early years, maybe
Mhm.
that educator that's just been happy to stay on a Cert 3, but they've been in the industry for 20 years, 100% they know more than that brand new
Yeah,
teacher
it
coming in.
says
But
something.
but then the funny thing is, often that teacher will come in and discount, not everyone, don't kill me. Sometimes new teachers come in and will discount that educator because they're only a Cert 3, but oh, if we sit back and listen, they actually know a lot. Just because they don't have a piece of paper does not mean they are not
Yeah,
qualified.
that's a flip side of that piece of paper
Yeah.
conversation, which is really
Mm,
important. Now, I want to actually ask you this question right now because
mm,
you just finished your qualification on
I
something.
did.
Yeah. And I know
Yes.
we are going on tangent, but this is how it is going to be, guys. Trying to connect the dots. By the time you get home, like, what is this? Okay. Okay. So here's an important question that I think, because this kind of will tell people more about you, Helen, and I want
Mm,
that. I want that
mm,
to be established.
mm.
Uh, you just finished your teaching degree. Now, before
Yes.
you did your teaching degree, I know that that
Mm,
might be like a memory that is not that familiar, because
mm,
sometimes it takes so long for us to it changes our identity, put it this way, the
mm,
qualification itself. But if you can think back of that time and now,
mm.
do you think that because you did teaching degree, you became a teacher?
No.
Perfect. So that is why I was asking, like, because you did
Mm,
a teaching degree, didn't make you a teacher, did it? It's
mm,
it's it's like this, when you do your practicums, when you actually do the teaching for a few years, maybe, then you go,
mm,
oh, now I get what that Piaget said. Because at the moment I passed the assignments, which is not easy to do either.
mm,
And the practicums that you did, which is also not easy to do. But that I was just uh, reinforcing what you said earlier, that because you have that degree doesn't yet mean that you are that yet, because there's still a
mm,
little work experience required in that, isn't it? Mm.
mm.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously it does give you the words. I mean, let's if you want to talk about Piaget, I think in out of school hours care, we do a lot of I can never say
Experiential learning.
yeah, look, thank you so much.
Don't worry about it. I'm here.
My brain doesn't want to say that today. We do that in Ush, but obviously, if you
Mhm.
haven't done a deep dive on Piaget, you're not going to know that that is what you're doing. So it does allow you to give labels to what you're doing, but
And
yeah, it's an
labeling is
interesting
important,
one.
because the labeling can help you duplicate that. If you can
Mm,
label it, then you can work on it. If you can name it, you can make progress on it. And that qualification thing, I think we will have a whole podcast episode on it, about
mm,
what qualifies, what is qualification, what is not a
mm,
qualification, what constitute being an educator.
mm,
The degree, is it work experience, is it a combination of all, or is it attitude, is it
mm,
characteristics, what is it, like, is it a combination of all? What is the constitution of an educator?
mm,
And I think the framework tries to define it, but I also believe that there's so many perspectives out there, and maybe we can get that. So in this podcast, guys, we're gonna have these segments, which I kind of did with uh, with Helen, is about getting personal segment, where
mm,
we kind of ask questions to Helen about her personal life. Which where is the husband? Okay, on the 19th list. He's on the personal life. And there's another segment which we say putting Helen on a hot seat.
mm,
But before I go on a hot seat, I actually want to add something to the previous segment about getting personal. Is there
mm,
something personal? Something that, because I've known you for what, 5, 6 years now, right? Is there
mm.
something that I don't know, or people like me, even though we've been working with you for so long, that we don't know of you, Helen? That's like
Oh,
something.
that.
You don't have to tell us secrets, but
What
maybe.
is your deep dark secret?
No, maybe I'll pause the recording for that. But this one is more like there's something that nobody knows, and I just don't know why they don't know. It's just that I never got the chance to say it. Is there anything?
Oh, I don't know. That's a hard one. Is
Hmm.
this? That's not like getting personal. I feel like that's a hot seat question.
Is it a hot seat
Uh,
question? Okay, we
no,
can.
I don't know whether I
You're
have
just
an
delaying
answer.
the answer so that I can get to the next segment, but that's okay. How about in throughout the thing, if you come up with something, you let me know.
I'll let you
Yeah.
know.
All right.
Yes.
You keep thinking about that. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move to the next segment, which is about. But this is what I wanted. Even to the guests, I'm going to do the same thing. Right. I'm not gonna. Oh, damn! If they listen to this, they would know that it's coming. Anyways, so but I didn't want you to know, because I'm like, okay, this is your first rodeo, so trauma starts now for you. Okay. Helen, I have a hot seat question. Have you ever
Hmm.
swore in front of kids, and you were like, damn, now what do I do? And how did you get out of it? If you did. And it has to be a verbal one. It can't be like a in the
Are we talking about in the workplace or in my household?
workplace. Ah, household, I know it is, yes.
Don't ask my kids.
Don't even get.
Oh, yes, I have actually sworn at work a couple of times. Probably the first time is my most memorable, maybe
Mhm,
because it was my first time.
mhm,
I had just been in Ush for not very long.
mhm.
You know, I mean, anyone that's worked in Ush knows we share school spaces and they're not always well equipped. Um, they're not always the greatest environment to facilitate quality care. And I remember one day I was doing washing up in a super low kids sink. So, great for the back, bending right, but not just the low kids sink. It also had low shelving. And so I was washing up in the sink and then I stood up. And as I stood up, I smashed my head into the shelf. And just side note, it was so hard that I ended up with a huge egg and bruise in the middle of my forehead. But I said, "Oh, shit." Yes, I actually said the shit word. Whoops. Are we allowed to
Mhm.
swear on this podcast?
Yes,
Um,
we are allowed to swear on this podcast. It's a
yes. So,
emotional well-being podcast. We can swear.
so yes, I said, "Oh shit," but then realized where I was and looked around at all the kids. Well, it was single staff member. It was only five kids. I looked around and looked at my five kids, and I looked at the one closest and said, "I'm so sorry. I should have never said that to you. I'm really sorry. That was a really bad word." And then she just looked at me really matter of fact and said, "It's okay. You can swear. My mum swears all the time." I was like, "Oh, okay, great."
Imagine
But
if,
so
yeah,
made
go
me
on, go
feel
on.
better.
Yeah, but that's good. But what if she said, "I've never heard that word before"? Damn, and you're like, you feel good. You must have felt so guilty.
I would have
Uh,
just kept waiting for the ground to swallow me up.
yes, I think there are times where this does happen with people. Hey, like they swear or they would do something, and they go, "Damn, it's so embarrassing. What do I do with it now?"
Mm,
Um, and I think people don't realize how being an educator is so performative.
mm.
We are
I often say
performing.
you're on all the time.
Yeah, it's like you're on a stage.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to make sure that things are going okay.
Mm,
And there's always a mental breakdown going on, but you still have to keep your face straight. You know what I mean? So, yeah, so that's how you did it. Okay,
mm,
kind of prepared this. But children also would go thinking, yeah, she's a human. Um, and talking about swearing, it kind of brings me another conversation into this. Uh, the words and the meaning are two different
mm,
things.
mm,
They're not always associated with the same magnitude. For example, a word might have a meaning. Let's say you said the word shit. Okay, cool. It has a meaning, significance.
mm,
But the significance is different in different areas, different
mm,
cultures.
mm,
So you could say that in certain parts of the services that I visited, certain parts of Australian towns, put it this way,
mm,
and nobody would even care about that.
mm,
You say the same thing, and I'm not talking about shit word now. I'm talking about other words. But
mm,
you say something similar somewhere else,
mm,
and there will be the incident report on it.
mm,
And I'm not saying that the other people are no, they are accepting of it. They're not okay with it, but they're accepting of it. Acceptance and being okay are two different things. Acceptance being,
mm.
I accept that this has occurred. Now I'm going to do something about it.
I think that was a hard and fast lesson I learned very early on in my career is that what is not okay in my house is very okay in other people's houses. And
Mhm.
that's not a judgment. It's just that, my decisions I make as a parent, again, identity, mother,
Mhm.
I choose not to do certain things, whereas in other households, it's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
And, as educators, we need to be okay with this. Well, I don't know if being okay about it. We need to be accepting of the fact that
Yeah.
different contexts, different
Yeah.
communities means different things.
Yeah. And I think that's the distinction I was getting at. That being accepting of something, like sometimes people think, oh, if I accept it, I'm accepting that in my life. I'm like, no, it's not about accepting as in being okay with it because it has already
Mm,
occurred.
mm,
You can sit here in conflict. Why it
mm,
occurred? But it already has occurred. Accept that it
mm,
has already occurred. The child has already said those words.
mm.
Now what are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
So it's okay with it having been occurred. Um, but yes. But swearing is a very interesting, and I think you and I have talked about how we would love to talk about swearing as in one of our
Mm,
episodes. Yeah? So,
mm,
so there are two episodes coming here: identity and swearing. Um, and I would just want to reiterate what I said earlier. In this podcast, it's a bit more free podcast, free as in
mm.
free spirit podcast. I want to be
Yes.
able to, for the guests or for you or for me, if it comes out, just let it happen. And if you are listening to this podcast and you think, oh, I'm gonna recommend this podcast to my friend or something, um, just say don't listen to the from this minute to that minute. Okay, so in case there'll be difficulty. As we said, we are just recording our phone conversation and making it formal. We talk anyways. So thank you for sharing about that thing about
Hmm.
swearing. Yeah. Hmm.
Great. So we've heard quite a bit from me just then. So I'm going to ask you the same
Go on.
question.
Hmm.
So, we know we're on the We Belong podcast, but there might be people. Well, I hope there's listeners. I hope there is.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's people listening. And who are you, Saurabh?
Because you answered that question quite distinctively, like you made distinctions about who you are in three or four ways. And when I'm doing my professional work, I would have a whole slide on distinct identities
Mm,
and the behaviors associated with it. But in a professional setting, my identity is so tied, just like my dad, to my professionalism.
mm,
I think doggo dad is a fun thing to say to people,
mm,
but I guess mostly I speak about my identity. Who am I as an educator? So my journey is back from 17 years of working with children in
mm,
capacities of after school care, yes, classroom teaching,
mm,
working with adults as educators, such as
mm,
university teaching for 8 years, consultant now as a We Belong Education. But I often say to people, and I don't think that everybody knows about this, but I often say that I didn't become a consultant because I said I was a consultant. I
mm,
became a consultant, I think, after visiting 100 services.
mm,
Because the first 80, let's say 50, first 50 to 60 or 70 services, I had my own will. I had my own ideas on how a service should look like.
mm,
And by 80th, I lost it. And I think that's
mm,
when I became a consultant because I became a better listener. I would listen to fix in the past because my services or my service was doing really good.
mm,
My professional life was going really good.
mm,
So when I would approach a service in the initial days of consultancy, I would be like, oh, this is what you should do. Or this is how a good service should look like. Right?
Is that because you were looking at it through the lens of how you ran your own service?
Yeah. My
Yeah.
own service or a couple of successful services that I got to manage or influence. So I
Mm,
would be influencing them to look like that. Or I would be so highly influenced by those experiences myself that everything which came out of my mouth was kind of a
mm,
version of that which would fit at your service. And but after visiting 80 or 100 services, imagine how many influential services that I would have looked at. And
mm,
when I got influenced by so many things so much that I didn't have my own will anymore. I
mm,
didn't have, I couldn't say this would work for you because that
mm,
works for them. I
mm,
would listen and my answers incorporated more questioning.
mm,
So no longer I give people do this, do that. I am I say I have to be at your service to be able to say this because it's kind of a concern that I often have with uh, social media groups like Facebook groups where people say, do this, do that.
mm.
And I'm like, ooh, but what if it doesn't work at their service?
Yeah, and I think that's a beautiful thing about the framework. And sometimes I think um, we get stuck in our own awareness. But one beautiful thing about the framework is what works at one service may not work at another service because we need to run our services that are authentic to the communities we're working within.
Yeah. Mhm.
So 100% just because it's working in one service, that advice might not work somewhere else because of the community that it's within or the staff that are facilitating. There's lots of reasons why it won't work. And I mean that, like I said, I love the beauty of the framework is that services can still be so individual.
Hmm.
It's not a cookie cutter answer for
Yeah.
everything.
And I think that's my third topic,
Mm,
third conversation that I would love to have along with identity swearing is the impact of culture at a service. Because I don't think
mm,
that culture can be communicated just through words.
mm,
You have to absorb the culture. There's something to be said about absorbing a culture. Let's
yes.
say you said swearing is not allowed at your home. Imagine that is an
Mm,
example, right? I come to your home after 5 days, I have stopped swearing.
mm,
Now, it's not that I'm reading something to then go, I should stop swearing. It's just nobody else is swearing. Let's say I
yeah.
come to your home and everybody goes to gym in the morning at 6 o'clock. Everybody. Within 6, 7 months, I'm waking up at 6 o'clock and doing some exercises. Why?
Mm,
Because I absorb the culture. There's something has to be. Now, I can't communicate that culture when I'm writing a question on a Facebook grid.
mm,
And people might be responding from their existing culture.
yeah.
So, having visited so many services, now as a consultant, which is my major identity,
Mm,
that I don't just speak words. I have to absorb their culture and say, what about this? Or how about this?
mm,
And that absorption takes more than an hour. Sometimes it takes days. Sometimes it takes months.
mm,
So some of my regular clients, for example, I would have the pleasure of seeing them every year,
yeah.
and I walk in and I just become one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you can't become the other when you're so
Mm,
absorbed with yourself.
yes.
Like I can't immerse into your service when I'm so influenced by my own service.
Mm,
And I think that's where management comes into when we start managing services, where we start asking services to be of a certain type. And rating and assessment can also I've written that down too. Rating and assessment can also be a challenge sometimes because people think, oh, we have to look like the other exceeding service.
yeah.
There's so much of judgment out there. So not judgment, but there's so much of assumption out there.
Mm.
So my identity is that I have lost mine,
Oh, no.
which is why I call myself a consultant now. Okay.
Wow.
That I just get to be with your service and say something.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is wise, they ask me again. If it is not, they don't. I'm just kidding. um, but yeah, and yeah, being a doggo dad is very important. As I said, my dad and mom, I talk to them all the time. So I'm
Mm,
still kind of exploring or expanding or examining, perhaps to some extent, about how am I a good brother still? Like, am I doing enough? Am I a good son?
mm,
Am I a good
mm.
am I a good son to my mom, to my dad? Uh, like, would they be proud of me? Like, all those questions still, uh, I would say, haunt me because they were like put on me when I was a kid. Uh, but no, I get to experience a lot of life with them. We
Mm,
travel to so many places. As a kid, we didn't, but now we do. So it
mm.
was yeah, really good. So yeah.
All right, my next question I have for you, I'm not even sure if this is a getting personal question or a hot seat question,
Okay.
but what I want to know is, have you ever considered leaving this sector, looking for what,
Never.
leaving the job?
No.
Never.
Never. Never have.
Wow. Okay.
Never. Like, I have to pause here because I'm just thinking. I have heard many people who have said that they're going to leave the sector, and
It's
I
it's
just
it's a
cannot.
very common theme at the moment.
Yeah. And it's in
Mm.
18 years. I've never felt that way.
Wow.
And I don't think that I can even look in 18 years. I would have seen everything, right? Like, not everything, but you see what I mean. Like I
Mm,
would have experienced what they're experiencing. It's not that I'm not on the floor. Yeah. Yes,
mm,
university teaching took me away from the floor, but when I was teaching at uni, I was still working 2 days a week on the floor. So I never
mm.
quit being on the floor for the last 18 years.
Yeah.
But professional, and I was with my friend yesterday, and I said the same thing to him. Professionally speaking, I'm envious of no one in my life
Wow.
because
That's a
I
great place
just
to be
love
in.
so much. Um, See, and I know when it all shifted for me. Like when I did my bachelor's in environmental sciences.
Mm,
So in India, they give you this medal, gold medal if you do good academically. So I got a
mm,
gold medal throughout for scoring first in the exam, right?
mm,
So, of course, as a science student, my master's was going to be in science.
Yeah.
Now, I only said about the gold medal thing is because I'm going to tell you what it took for me to let go of that.
Mm,
So there's a hard-earned work where you get that medal because it was important for my family that I get something in science good
mm,
enough. And in
mm,
India at that time, and in now, and in many places, even in Australia now, where your future hinges on your academic abilities.
mm,
Right. So look at us now. Like we always are gaining another qualification so that our future we get promotion or something like that.
mm,
So as in schooling or in university, my future hinge on how good I do, how well do I do with this
mm,
degree. So it was there was no option but to get that. But what happened was, so I applied for environmental management in Australia.
mm,
That is, I did my bachelor's in India and I was going to come here as a student. So my but there was a delay in visa for 9 months.
mm,
In the month of March, I got the visa, but it was for January or February intake or something. So yeah,
mm,
11 months. So I started teaching English for those
mm,
who, because we had to give English examination to get visa for Australia. So I
mhm,
started teaching English in that institute, and I realized, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And
mm,
I came home after a couple of months and I said to my dad, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of doing teaching instead of environmental management. And my dad lost it. I'm like, what? You're a man. You should be doing science. Um, and why my dad's opinion mattered, because my dad is an engineer himself, it mattered because we and in our home at our home we were all malnourished at that time. That's a joke we have because we would just not have the right food. Anyways, we didn't have enough money, so we had put our house against the loan amount, because in Australian government will give you a visa if you could show that you can survive Australian situation dollar wise,
mm.
money wise.
Okay. Yep.
Although when you come here, you get a part-time job and you try to repay that
Mm,
university fee, which many immigrant students do. So those were in plan, but to get the visa, I needed my dad to show the house. And
mm,
here I am saying to him that I'm going to go and do teaching. So he came
mm,
and attended one of my classes to see what I am all on about. And he said, it seems that you love it. Yeah, you're right. You love it. I'm like, yes, Dad, I absolutely love this.
mm.
Since that day, 2007 to now, never had a second thought. Teaching was all I wanted to do forever.
Wow.
And now being a consultant, I think I'm gonna die talking about children, education, identity, what is it, culture, doing podcasts. Yeah, I found my niche in 2007 itself. And I wish the same for everyone. It may not be in education for you. It could be in
Mm,
something else. But I really hope that you find something, because then yeah, money would not matter. Honestly,
mm.
it's so peaceful. And there are issues, but because I love it so much, those issues don't impact me.
Yeah.
Mm, never impacted. So I hope I have answered your question, the hot seat
You
one,
have. You
because
have.
I have a conversation that I want to have.
Yes.
Um,
What is it?
yeah, the conversation is, why are we doing this podcast, Helen?
Why?
Sorry, like too late to ask that question. Damn, we already doing it, sir.
We're already doing it. Too late. I think possibly I have three answers to that question. There's probably more, but I've got three main ones.
Damn, you have numbers here too. Okay, go on. Hmm.
Number one,
Okay.
I love to talk, as we
Okay.
know,
No.
because we talk on the phone so
Yeah.
often. I love, love, love to talk. Anyone that knows me knows this is the thing.
Hmm.
Two, I think a podcast is a really great mechanism for me to talk to people that I want to talk to. Um, you
Mm.
know, I'm a lifelong learner. I don't think I'm ever going to get to the destination where I think, okay, I know enough now. And, I
Yeah.
think if I've got this question, surely somebody else in our sector has the same
Yes.
question. So I
Yes.
just
Yes.
think by having a podcast and asking
Yeah.
these questions, hopefully, I hope, well, one, I hope people are listening. And two, I hope that, someone's getting the answer that they've also been
Hmm.
wanting.
Yeah.
And three, a lot of people that know me know this. I'm not afraid to ask the dumb, dumb question.
Hmm.
And I say dumb, dumb, but it's just it's actually not, I don't think any question is a dumb question, but a
Yeah.
lot of times when we're trying to seem very professional or, we don't want to let in that maybe we don't know as much as we
Yeah,
think
we
we
don't want
should
our
know.
competency to be questioned. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not afraid to ask those questions. And I think, again, if I've got these dumb questions, surely someone else has. So, again, I hope that our little podcast, well, I hope, maybe not so little, who
Mhm.
knows, will help, a few people get the answers that
That they're
I'm
looking
wanting.
for.
Maybe they want them as well.
Yeah. Okay. I like it. Love it. Love the reasons why we're doing it. But I want to add something. When you said I talk a lot, um, I have heard Helen talk a lot, as she says. She talks quality, and I think that
Oh, thanks.
you would have already realized that those who are listening, that she talks quality. The reason for recording the podcast, from my perspective, is something similar that you've said, but it's also stems from how there's a sense of loneliness that you
Mm,
see in education, uh,
mm,
being an educator. I get to visit so many places, but I don't know if I this is my way of staying in touch with them, because we all want to feel connected sometimes,
yes.
but we don't always have those resources to stay connected. We
Mm,
might have questions. We might have questions, and then because of those questions, we might start questioning our own abilities.
mm,
Or if I have this silly question, what does it say about me?
mm,
That yes, we all work in a team. Some of them have single staff service, but we all work in a team. Family daycare has single staff service most of the time.
mm,
But when you're doing that critical reflection, although you've been
mm,
given the training,
mm,
sometimes you're like, this is just me and the reflection now for 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
mm.
When you're driving back home because something happened at service and the staff members gave you the confidence, you did the right thing. But as you're driving alone, you're alone in that very moment.
Yeah.
And hopefully you listen to this podcast and you go, right, I'm not alone. There are educators way more experienced than I am, or way less experience than I have,
Mm,
are still dealing with those things. So in one way, this is to just humanize
mm,
education.
mm.
It's like it's done by humans, and there's human characteristics to it. There are dumb days that are not dumb. There are dull days. I keep saying the word
And
dumb.
dumb days.
The and dumb days. There's some great days, and I hope that they can have this thread that they can
Mm.
adhere to. Something like, oh
Mm.
yeah, there will always be this podcast for them that they
Well,
can listen.
I think that's a slight extension on something that I just touched on about I'm not afraid to ask the dumb questions.
Hmm.
Anyone that does know me might know that I try and do a termly networking meeting within our
Hmm.
sector because I truly believe in creating a safe space for people to ask questions. And I also believe that the only way we can advance our sector is by working together, no
Yeah.
matter who we are or who we work for. Now, I really encourage people. Hopefully, we've got listeners and they've made it to this far in our podcast, Saurabh. But I really encourage if anyone's listening and you are driving home or you've got
Yeah.
a critical reflection question and you want an extension, message us. And
Hmm.
if we don't know the answer or how to talk about it, we'll definitely find someone we can get on to
Yeah.
have these conversations. Because
Yeah.
this is my thing. Like I said, I'm not afraid to ask the silly questions or be the face of the question if someone's not so confident in asking it to
Hmm.
get those answers. Because I think the worst thing for everyone is that self-doubt of maybe I don't know. Everyone is
Yeah.
awesome in their own right. Just because you have a question doesn't make you any less awesome. So
Yeah.
if you want the We Belong podcast to be the face of your questions, please
Please do
message
that.
us
Yeah.
and we will either talk about it between the two of us, or if we actually don't know the answer, we'll get somebody on who does know the answer.
We will always have a link every time we release the podcast where they can leave some comments and questions. So
Mm-mm,
we will always have that. It will be when we release these on our social platforms. I'll give an
mm,
example. Like, it happened within 24 hours. A
mm,
friend of mine and I had a dinner last night together.
mm,
I do have a couple of friends in my life. He's one of them. He's an educator himself, and he says to me that he took a 4-week holiday.
mm,
Um, uh, leave, sorry, 4 week leave, because they
Mm,
were gonna go overseas for two of those weeks.
mm,
Uh, but that overseas trip got canceled for some reason.
mm,
So, but they decided to keep keep that leave on and still take that leave. So
mm.
stay home. And he said it took him 2 weeks to start relaxing.
Wow.
Okay.
Mm,
Like for the first 2 weeks, he was like, like still thinking he's working, although he's
yeah.
not working. Look, maybe if he had gone overseas, might have been better because
Mm,
change of location itself. But for now, it took him 2 weeks. Then and he said, uh, then she started relaxing on third week, and by fourth week, he was nice to his kids.
oh,
So he's like,
okay.
I
Yep.
was so nice, and like it was such a good thing to say I was nice to my own kids. But
Mm,
what happens is he says that when he went back to work, the day one, and I don't know you're listening on a podcast, but those who are watching our show on, let's say, online, sorry, on YouTube or something or Facebook, he does this to his head, like as if the fingers coming close to his, the palm with
mm,
finger spread coming close to his face. Like
mm.
something just hit me.
Everyone knows that emoji that people
Yeah,
listening can
yeah.
imagine. It's the face palm emoji.
Face palm, but the fingers are apart. So it's like
Yes.
he wants to
Yeah.
show that that big thing hit him, not a small
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something just hits him.
Mm,
His left shoulder is hurting now,
mm,
you know? And he's saying, I thought it was just normal, but I realized after 4 weeks of not working that no, that shoulder ache is not a normal thing. I thought everybody just has shoulder pain, but not everybody has shoulder pain. And as he's saying it, I feel like there are always parts of loneliness in education where that shoulder ache or uh, no, he's sharing that with me. But if he hadn't
mm,
met me, I don't know who he would have shared that with. That hey, look, it took me 3 weeks or third week to actually start relaxing. So I meet so many amazing people. I say I meet Helen in some town in Australia, or I see her in Sydney or something. And therefore, on this Facebook page, I had tried to put resources out so that even though they I don't get to see them again. Maybe they don't have enough budget to have me.
mm.
Or and like I always blame the budget if they can't have me for the second session, not on my performance. Okay.
Not
So
the quality of the PD.
they're like, oh my God, he was such a bad guy. We don't want him again in my life. No, no, no. Oh, they might not have the budget money. That's how I go to bed peacefully. Okay. Um, so 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 far what I was doing is I was like releasing those because that Helen can see
Mm,
something on Facebook and go, oh, I can use that. Like,
mm,
cool. Because I'm not gonna call them to say, hey, I have some, because if I start calling, how many people would I call? Yeah.
mm,
So so this podcast being released on those platforms is also one way to say, hey, I know we saw each other 1.5 years ago, but there's something that I've discussed, uh, which was similar to what we discussed at your service. Maybe you'll find something new in there, and it's
mm,
it's available to them. So that is why we want to provide these podcasts and some ideas we have. So I'm just gonna share those ideas, and then we're gonna call
hmm.
it a day because I don't want people to be driving around their own suburb because they're almost home, but they just can't stop their car because they're so engaged in this conversation. They want to stop the
We hope, we hope.
no, oh, absolutely. I'm so cocky confidence in this, okay? That you're like, oh my God, I can't stop listening to what's going on. Oh, okay. What's next? What's next? Okay, so here's the thing. Some of the episodes that we want to do is we want to do live sessions. So
Yes.
people can join us live.
Mm,
Um, you can put your cameras on or something. I did one of them live. It was a live Q&A session, but I want to have live podcast session.
mm,
We'll record that session for people, those who couldn't join us, but we want to do that live.
mm,
We also want to have not just the experienced staff and other consultants or experts, but we also want to have people who have been working on the floor and who have just joined recently to
mm,
kind of hear their perspective on how from how do they view this sector. Um,
mm.
we have another session where we are planning on having our dogs. Helen, what do you call that session?
Oh, I rang Saurubh a few months ago and I said, because this is how long we've been talking about a podcast for, I said, I really think we need to do a podcast on well-being because we know lots of people are talking about burnout, but also it was an excuse for me to have my dogs on the podcast.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I don't think they're going to say much, but my dogs are definitely a lifeline to my mental health. I
Mhm.
often, a few of my work colleagues will know that I'll sometimes in the office say, I just want to go home and lay on the lounge with my dogs because
Mm.
it truly is my downtime. Dogs are always so happy to see you. They don't
Meanwhile,
care.
meanwhile, I'm thinking when you're gone, Helen, sorry I interrupted you. Meanwhile, I'm thinking when you're gone, the dogs are like, oh, she's gone, man. Tough work. Like
You're so needy.
I have to give her so much. She won't let go of me in the bed. And now she's gone. Okay. And they're meditating somewhere,
No,
preparing for
lucky.
Helen to
No,
come
I'm
back.
very lucky that I've got a needy oodle who I can throw the rubbish out, walk outside to throw the rubbish out, and then he greets me like he hasn't seen me for
Oh,
years. So,
good. Wow. So you
super
found each
important.
other. So good. It's so nice. But yeah, also having Helen's kids want to be in the. When I say Helen's kids, they are educators themselves, so they want to be in the podcast, which gave us the idea about having people who listen to us be on the podcast. So
Mm.
we want you to put your hand up and say, hey, look, I want to come and share something. Um,
But also, I mean, I touched on it before. I genuinely believe there is people in this sector who we don't know, but they genuinely have such great information and
mhm,
ideas. And,
yeah,
I mean, we joke about the Facebook groups all the time, don't we, Sarah? But, I've seen some great advice on
responses. Yes,
those
yeah, yeah, yeah.
genuinely great advice from people that we don't know them because they're not a consultant or they're not
Hmm. Hmm.
some figurehead at a sequel, but they genuinely have been in this sector for so long and they've honed their skills. Like those are the people I want to talk to. As I said, lifelong learner, please give me your ideas.
Yeah, yeah. We're gonna get a Seiko on here. We're gonna get um, cu- uh, big companies over here, but I absolutely appreciate the quality which exists among many of us, and that can be shared for the benefit of others. But
So we do need to share before we log off that we do want people to contact us if they want to come on and talk with us.
yeah, because
And how do they do that?
I don't know if I've told you this. I have a Facebook page,
Oh,
Instagram page.
really? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Now, hang on. Instagram, very important. If you search We
Yes,
Belong, you won't find it. What is it?
you have to write at two we belong. Two is a number.
Number two.
Number two
Yes.
we belong. Um, but this
And
is
then
where, yeah,
you can
go on.
also find us both. You could DM us both on LinkedIn if you
LinkedIn.
have some
Mhm,
questions or
mhm.
you want to come on our podcast. We'd be really happy to hear from you.
Circling back before I let
Mm,
you off the hook,
mm.
did you think about something that nobody knows?
No.
Hmm.
Um, oh, I don't really
Okay,
know.
I'll I'll tell you
And
I'll
now
tell
I
you
felt
one.
really boring.
No, that's fine. We can judge you for that. I'll tell you
That's okay. You can judge me.
something about me, so that it looks like the question is answered, but
Mm,
from the podcast it answered the question, but not from me. Children ask
mm,
me, adults don't ask me this question, and that's interesting how playful children could be.
mm.
You see, there's a mark on my forehead here.
Yes.
Children always ask me where did I get the mark from, especially if
Mm,
I'm sitting next to them. And mostly, if I'm talking to a group of children for half an hour, they'll ask me that.
mm.
Uh, I don't know why adults don't care. Maybe they think it will be too sensitive to ask me. Yeah? That happened because my sister pushed me down the stairs. That's the story I'm going with. Okay.
And is that the true story?
True story. So if
Is
you
that
ever
why
see
you
my
call her
sister,
trauma?
yes. And we were twins. I don't know what I was wearing, but I think I was because we were twins within the first 3 4 years, and we didn't have money, so we will just exchange the clothes, whatever she wears, I wear, whatever.
Mm,
She was even taller than me for till year six, you
mm,
know. And I think I don't know what I was wearing at that time, but I couldn't balance myself, and she kind of nudged me or something, and now it's recorded. Tina, you caused this. So adults don't ask me this question, but children always do. So many children know this answer, but adults don't. But Helen, is there anything that you would like to add before we say goodbye to our listeners?
No, I think I'm going to leave feeling really inadequate and boring because I don't have an answer to your
Okay, that's a
question.
very good place to end the session. Very good. I'm so happy that I could be a contributor to that feeling. Um, Goodbye from me, by the way. Thank you very much. This is my second rodeo on this podcast. Uh, Please do tell us what you would like to hear. We have enough content coming from the Facebook group, but we would like to hear from you. These podcast recordings will be on YouTube channel, but there will be snippets of that and sometimes the whole episode on Facebook. It will always come with a link where you could perhaps, add comment or questions, which can also lead us to the next conversation. So you can build this podcast.
Hmm.
With that, thank you very much for listening to us and allowing us to be of contribution to your drive back home, if that's what you like to listen to.
Well, we
Thank you,
don't know.
Helen.
It could be a good morning, good evening, or good night. We don't know
Good.
when people are listening to us.
Absolutely. Yes.
Hmm.
Thank you very much for being there. Look after yourself and the people you love. From We Belong Education podcast, it's a goodbye. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.